Greetings and welcome to another live stream from Freedom Worship Center here in the Bronx. Well, actually, I'm in Orlando, Florida. But I am Pastor Bartholomew L. John, and I am sitting in for Pastor Raymond B. John, the voice that you have grown accustomed to hear at this time. Well, I hope my voice will be just as uplifting to you as his voice has been. I want to talk to you today on a subject that we call the invisible hand of God. And here are the relevant scriptures we believe will be helpful to you. Now, I want to ask you two questions before I start this message. The first question is, have you seen the hand of God in your life? And the second question is, how did you know that it was the hand of God? Well, I hope by the end of this message, the two questions will be answered and you will know for certain how to recognize the hand of God in your life. Now, the Bible tells us that God is a spirit. We find that in the New Testament, the Gospel of St. John, the 4th chapter and the 24th verse. And so if God is a spirit, it means that he is not visible to us except where he makes himself visible. And so when we speak of the anatomy of God, his eyes, his mouth, his hands, his feet, we are using those terms to better relate to God. But we want to focus on the hand of God. Now, most times, even those who do not even profess to be a believer, they readily see what they call the hand of God working in certain circumstances. Anytime somebody says, God did that, or it's all God, they're saying that they recognize the presence of God. They recognize the influence of God in that situation. Now, for us, we know and we believe that we see the hand of God when dealing with sinners or those who are opposite to him. We say God punishes the evildoers. We also readily see the hand of God in believers when they are blessed, when the prayers are answered. We say God is with me, or God was with me. So I call those the visible hand of God, when you recognize what has happened in your life or in your circumstance that no one else could have done it but God. And so we are experts on recognizing the hand of God. And even sometimes when we say it's God, we are not sure if it's really God, but we should be sure, and we can be sure. After we go through this text and this message, you will surely know how to recognize the invisible hand of God. Let's look at our text in Job chapter 12. And I want to start with the 4th verse. Job chapter 12, verse 4. Job is responding to his friend Zophar, who has put a whooping, you call a beating on Job verbally, criticizing him. And Job said to him in verse 4, I am as one mocked of his neighbor who called upon God, and he answered him. The just upright man is laughed to scorn. Job told Zophar, he said, listen, I'm going through some difficult times now, the worst in my life. We know the story that Job lost his family, all his possession, he lost his health. And now Job is just in a deplorable state. And his three friends came to support him. And instead of supporting him, they are bashing him, accusing him of committing some atrocity against God. Job said, you don't remember me, but I had a special thing with God. I was able to call God at any time, and he answered me speedily, right away. And you know, as I read that verse, I'm wondering how many of us really could say we have such a special relationship with God. We are so confident that if we call upon God, he will answer. Do you have that special relationship with him? Well, Job did. Job said, look, I did not need a lamp. I did not need a light, because God's presence, God just led me and guided me, that Job had need for nothing. And Job said, well, now things have changed. You see, what the friends who were criticizing Job saw is what we call the visible hand of God. They saw Job as a sinner, and they saw God chastising Job for Job's sin. At first, when the trouble started for Job, he probably thought that God was just chastising him or punishing him. But as Job thought deeper, Job reflected on something he knew, a truth about God. Job said, the visible hand of God, as I call it, punishes sinners and blesses believers. Job said, I am not a sinner. So whatever I'm going through, it cannot be punishment from God, because God does not punish believers. So Job said it had to be something else that I'm going through that I have not yet understood. So Job began to dig deeper into his relationship with God, trying to see something that most of us would not see unless we understand all the attributes of God. Just to backtrack a little bit, we go back to Job chapter 11, and we're going to look at the 6th verse where Zophar is talking to Job, telling Job he should be very, very thankful to God, because God has not dealt with Job according to the severity of Job's sin. Let's look at that verse. And that's Zophar talking about God, that he would show thee the secrets of wisdom, that they are double to that which is, know therefore that God exacted of thee less than thy iniquity deserve. So Zophar is trying to counsel Job, telling Job that the punishment that you're getting is not worth the sins you have committed. And then again, Zophar is looking at what I call the visible hand of God. Most of us, we see that hand. And when you say that, and if you answer the question, yes, you have seen the hand of God in your life, I believe most likely you're talking about things that you saw, that was done, that you believe only God could do. That is the visible hand of God. So let me ask you now another question. Can you see the invisible hand of God in your life? Can you see the invisible hand of God in your circumstances? Can you see the invisible hand of God in your sickness, in your wants, in your pain, in your suffering? Can you see that hand there? And that is the challenge most of us have. We are not able to see. We have the capability, but we cannot do it because we don't know how to distinguish that invisible hand from all other hands. Well, Job was able to do that. And I'm going to share with you how he did that. We want to go to Job chapter 12, and we're looking at verses 9 and 10. Job chapter 12, verse 9. The tabernacles. Well, it said, we're looking at Job chapter, let's look at verse 7, verse 8, the verse before. Or speak to the earth, and it shall teach thee, and the fishes of the sea shall declare unto thee. Job is saying that the animals and the earth knows exactly what he's talking about. But let's go back to verse 6. Verse 6 is where I want to focus on. And this is Job's statement. The tabernacles of robbers prosper, and they that provoke God are secure, into whose hand God's bring it abundantly. Job began to change his paradigm. Job said, wait a minute. Up to this point, until Job's suffering, Job thought that the prosperity of the wicked was not of God, because we believe wicked people would not prosper. We believe that sinful, devious people, that God won't allow them to prosper. And Job had that same belief that sinners get punished and righteous people get blessed. Well, now as Job reflects, Job said, wait a minute. If sinners are prospering, the tabernacle of robbers are prospering, and they that do not believe in God, do not trust God, they are secured, but they are living abundant life. But Job realized that they could not do that unless the invisible hand of God allowed them to do that. Because you see, as we go back to verse 9, Job chapter 12, verse 9, Job said, talking about all the creation knows, the animal knows, that who knoweth not in all this that the hand of the Lord had wrought this. Job now began to see God's hand in the prosperity of the wicked. Now, if Job could have seen the invisible hand in the prosperity of the wicked, how much more should we be able to see the invisible hand in our lives, those of us who know we are not wicked? Once Job saw that God controls the prosperity of those who are unrighteous, because he recognized the sovereignty of God. He recognized that God is the sole proprietor of everything on earth, and those wicked men could possess nothing unless God, who has all control over all the resources of the earth, allowed them to prosper. The invisible hand of God in the prosperity of the wicked. So no longer should we fuss ourselves about when the wicked prosper. No longer should we tear our hair out and get so worked up because they are doing well. God is allowing them to do well because God controls every single thing on earth. We will not be able to see the invisible hand of God until we could recognize the sovereignty of God, who has power, ultimate power, all-powerful God, the omnipowerful God. He has no limit on what he can and cannot do. And when we recognize that he has full power and authority and sovereignty over the universe, then we can begin to see his hand working in the hand of those who appears to be prospering, even if they are wicked. You may ask me, well, how does that affect me? Well, if you are a believer and you have just complained about some unfairness and you're upset and you change your whole life prospect because of some undesirable event in your life. If you are now so distressed over what just happened, you think it should not happen. If you are now fussing over what you believe is so unfair in life, then you are not seeing the invisible hand of God in your life. You are still looking for the God that punishes the obvious. But no, we must learn to see God working in our life. Now, we believe the devil has power. He has power. God authorizes him. He is the prince of this world, and princes have power. And many times we see things happening that we do not like, we do not desire, we don't want. And we say, that devil, boy, I tell you, we point him out. And yes, the devil is working against us, the child of God, children of God. Yes, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Yes, the devil has interrupted our progress. Yes, the devil has taken away our peace. The devil has taken away our comfort. The devil has messed with our health. The devil has messed with our children. The devil has messed with our relationship, our marriage, our ministry, our job, our progress. Yes, he has done some damages. He came to steal, kill, and destroy. But if you're focusing on the devil, you see his hand is visible. Oh, he makes his hand visible. The devil does not come. He let you know, I'm messing with you. But we must see the invisible hand of God controlling the hand of Satan, who God is allowing to work in our lives. Job is the perfect example of that. God allows Satan to work with Job, and Job came to the point, and Job saw God's invisible hand holding Satan's hand, whatever Satan was doing. God still controls whatever Satan can do. And if you and I cannot see God's hand working in circumstances in our life, we cannot see the invisible hand of God. Now, when Gopher told Job that he must be thankful for the mercy of God because God did not punish him the way he should be punished, boy, I tell you, after Job saw the invisible hand working. Job said, wait a while, I'm not a sinner. God is not punishing me. God is doing something greater than I could understand. I need to have that knowledge, to acquire the knowledge, to see God's purposes in my life greater than my own self. When Job saw that, I like his response to go for in Zophar, in Job chapter 13. And we're going to look at verses 13 to 15. This is Job now. He got his vision now. He said to Zophar, hold your peace, let me alone, that I may speak, and let come on me what will. Wherefore do I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hand? Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will always maintain my own ways before him. You see, when Job saw the invisible hand of God, Job said, look, now I could enjoy that's what you call suffering in ease now. It's still painful. It's still undesirable, but now he knew it was God who was doing that, allowing that to him for a higher purpose. I will not take my life in my own hands. When you see the hand of God, the invisible hand of God in your life, you will not take matters into your own hands. You will leave them in the invisible hands of God. There is somebody you're dealing with. They are frustrating you. They are tormenting you. You call them, that person, the devil. Maybe the devil has entered into that person. But if you focus on them only, and you don't see that God is allowing them to do what that person is doing for greater good, for higher good concerning you, then you are not capable of seeing the invisible hand. You're seeing the natural hand of man, and the natural hand of man cannot overshadow the hand of God. We must learn to see the invisible hand of God. You know, as I look at Job chapter 2, verse 9, the sad commentary of his wife. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thy integrity? You still maintain your trust with God? Curse God and die. The wife did not see, she could not see the invisible hand of God. But Job saw the invisible hand of God. And when the invisible hand of God is visible to you, you maintain your faith and trust and confidence in God no matter what. If he slay me, let him slay me. But I'm going to keep my trust and faith and confidence in him. I want to just touch on, if I have the time, I know my producer just told me I have a little time left. I have a few minutes left. So in the time left, I want to touch on two familiar cases, historic cases in the Bible that shows us the understanding or the vision of the invisible hand of God. We first turn to the book of Daniel. Excuse me. Daniel chapter 3, a very familiar story. Reading from verses 16 to 18, very familiar story. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Can you see what those boys saw. They were in the palace. Yes, they saw King Nebuchadnezzar's hand, powerful signet ring, can give an order that cannot be reversed. And they saw his hand, and they saw their lives in his hand. The king at that moment could have done anything he wanted, his king, to those boys. If those boys only saw the king's hand, they would have bowed. But holding that powerful king's hand, they saw the invisible hand of God, like the puppeteer, controlling the puppet. The king was just a puppet in the hands of the invisible God. And they saw the invisible hand of God. And this was their reasoning. They said, look, God holds your hand. So our lives are in God's hand. God may deliver us into your hand. God may take us out of your hand. God may deliver us into your hand to put us in the fire, but God can deliver us from the fire. So either way, we're not looking at you, King. We don't care to discuss that. We don't care to talk about it. If this case is closed, we're not going to listen to you because we're seeing the invisible hand of God that is controlling your hand and every move you make. With those kind of vision, who can be against you when you see God is for you? We learn we must see God's hand in circumstances where we are not comfortable or where it might cost us our life. Let's look at another story. Genesis chapter 50, another familiar one. I will read verses 19 to 20. Another familiar ones. Joseph and his brothers in Egypt. And Joseph said unto them, fear not, for I am in the place, am I in the place of God? But as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it on the good to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now, I thought about Joseph, and I'm wondering at what point did Joseph see the invisible hand of God? When he was placed in the pit by his brothers, he cried for mercy. When he was sold to slavery to the Midianites, I believe he probably thought his life was over. So I'm thinking in my mind that maybe Joseph saw the invisible hand of God after everything had worked itself out. But I'm wrong. I'm very wrong with that. You see, Joseph must have seen the very hand of God, the invisible hand of God from the very beginning, because when he was sold into slavery in Egypt, he maintained his faith, he maintained his confidence, he maintained his trust in God. And that is a sign of somebody who sees the invisible hand of God when in adverse circumstances can maintain their faith and trust and confidence in God no matter what. That's why he had the favor with God. Because he saw the invisible hand of God, Joseph was able to bear whatever brought his way. He was able to resist temptation of the flesh because he could not sin against God. He saw God in Potiphar's house. He saw God in the jailhouse. He saw God when he went up to Pharaoh. He saw God when he became second in command to Pharaoh. He saw God working behind the scene. And that's what I'm calling the invisible hand of God. And until we could see that hand, we will not be able to maintain our confidence and trust in God. So now let me ask you this. Are you seeing God's hand now? Is it visible now? That is God allowing this thing to happen that you want to end right now? Can you now endure with a little more patience? Can you now relax a little bit more and say, God is handling this? Think of the worst person in your life. Think about the person you think is about to destroy you. Think about somebody who is trying to go against you. Can you now see God behind them? Can you see God in front of them? Can you see God controlling them? When you do that, then you could enjoy your life, no matter what comes your way, in peace. There is a scripture before I close. I want us to look at Romans 8:28. Is a scripture we rush through. And we know, and here we know, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. I want to go back to that verse again, though, and I want to stop at the third word. And we know. And we know. We know. Do you know that? Well, who are the we? Are you included in that we? We know. Do you know that all things work together? Do you know that? I don't think we do. We say we do, we don't. Because when we know that all things work together, then we can be like Job and say, though he slay me, it don't matter what happens. All things work together for good, but only when we can see the invisible hand of God in those circumstances, then we can really say we know. When you know that one door closes, you see another one opens. One barrier is just a stepping stone to a higher heights. When you are not allowed to do what you thought you would like to do, you see God again trying to prepare you for something better. When the body is not well and you're hindered from going along with your plans, you see God preparing you for something better. And when you could see the invisible hand of God, there will be nothing that will offend you. There will be nothing that can distract you from serving him. God has all power. There is no power greater than his. There is nothing he cannot do. And we must remember that there must be a higher purpose for God allowing things in our lives that we don't understand. Let me sum it up. Let me close with 4 points. I want to look at the first point. 1, to see the invisible hand of God, we must first recognize God's sovereignty and sole ownership of everything in the universe. He is sovereign and he owns everything. Nothing happens unless he allows it. The second point, the omnipotent and omniscient God can use and will use anything and everything necessary, including the devil's hands, to accomplish his will in our lives. God is not restricted what resources he could use. Anything to his disposal, he will use it because all things work together for good. The third point, because God is omnipotent and omniscient and he has sovereignty, we must develop our spiritual eyes to see the invisible hand of God controlling the devil's hand that is meddling in our affairs. Satan cannot do a thing unless God allows him. So you know what? Say, okay, Satan, you're just a servant of God. Do what you must do, and because God will allow you to do only what is good for me. And the last point, point 4, those who can see the invisible hand of God will trust him amid persecution, suffering, and any other negative circumstances. Well, my time is up. My producer just told me my time is up. And I literally have a few minutes left, but I just want to talk to you, because you see, it's good to read those things on paper, but unless we begin to practice this, and let me give you two advices. My own philosophies, 2 philosophies I I live by. One is that we put time on things. Time on things. With God, there is no timing. He has no clock. So we must learn to allow God to run the course in our lives. Relax, see his hand and relax. Let him do his thing. Outcomes. So two things, time and outcome. We believe God, we have faith in God when the time is short and the outcome is favorable. Outcomes does not change God. Outcomes does not move God. Outcomes should not change us. Whatever the outcome is, we must still see God's hands working in our lives, invisible. Yes, it might be, but now it's no longer invisible now. Guess what now? I just realized this. Now, God's hand is no longer invisible. So we change the invisible hand to the visible hand because now you're seeing the hand of God in your life. It's no longer invisible. So continue looking for God's hand. And when you see it, let him hold on to whatever it is you have, and your life will change and your life will be better. And of course, you will be able to go closer to God. Well, I hope this message has enlightened you somehow. And I hope now you start looking around, change the circumstances in your life and see things differently. And now don't be so upset with things and so annoyed with things and so sick with things, but just relax and enjoy God. Tell God, do what you must do, for you must have a higher purpose, for I'm seeing your invisible hand in me. Well, may God bless you and keep you until next time. Peace.